Welcome to the 2023 Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, filmed on location at the IGFA and brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. You're about to learn from teams of some of the top saltwater fishing pros, and how you really glean the most from the Saltwater Sportsman Seminar Series is listen for the little subtleties, the small things that we are doing to put together a great catch or to get a few fish when times are tough out there. So let's get right down to it and start off with the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series.
Coming to you from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, it's the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Get ready, everybody. Here's George Poveromo.
Welcome to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series. We're at the IGFA being filmed, and the series is presented by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. The session we're going to do here has a little bit of a scientific overtone to it, and we all have our ideas how color plays into fishing. Certain color lures, certain colors to skirt your baits by. Does it really make a difference? And we have a really solid panel of anglers. We have Captain Cory Crochetiere, who's based out of Connecticut but fishes all of New England for trophy striped bass, as well as tunas on light tackle and mostly on artificial lures. Harry Vernon III, a good buddy, grew up with him over here too. And we have a solid South Florida angler, and we're playing him up from the scientific aspect. You are Dr. John Stieglitz, and I appreciate you being part of our series. I grew up fishing. It always was taught to match nature. When we mahi fish, for example, I watched a flying fish taking off. And a lot of that determines what size bait or ballyhoo that I would put behind the boat. Small flyers, I go with more of the smaller baits. The big horse flyers, you bump up a little bit. But I try to get, if I'm skirting these baits, and I use a lot of weedless ballyhoo these days, I was always brought up matching nature. So John, first question over to you too. Given the offshore, does color, in your opinion, really make a difference?
I think when you're trolling, a lot of it is you're getting a reaction strike, right? And so color does make a difference in terms of helping the fish find that bait. Maybe it's in the prop wash, right? And so I think you nailed it in terms of matching the hatch, right? Both the size and also the colors that you see there, right? If they're eating a lot of flyers, you want to use that blue, silver, white, right? A blue and white islander is a classic bait over a ballyhoo. But also if you're seeing a lot of smaller mahi around, using that mahi skirt as well, right? The green and yellow, that's a classic. And so I think it does make a difference, obviously, right? But as we say, a lot of the colors you see in the tackle store are there to catch the fisherman, not necessarily the fish.
Which is true, and then yet, and you and I are on the same train of thought here with match up the colors. You talked about probably the most sold color are your blues, your blue and whites, but then somebody will go out with an orange skirt or some oddball one and then catch fish on it. And wahoo being a good example, they like black and purple. And is it just because some people make decent catches and that fever spreads and all have to have that certain color? What could you make out of, say, black and purple? What possibly could the fish think? Could that be bonita or tuna color or what?
Well, exactly. It could also be, some folks think it's a squid coloration also, those blacks and purples, right? But also when you're wahoo fishing, typically those baits might be running deeper, right? And also at a faster pace. So you want that fish to be able to see it as it's moving by quickly. And, you know, those blacks and purples may stand out a little better in the prop wash as you're trolling, high-speed trolling for wahoo.
Okay, Cory, let's go back up a New England way.
Usually what you want to do, though, is that you want to figure out what color for the day is going to be the hot color. It might be the same color that was yesterday or the week before. So if you're going to put out a spread for tunas, you're going to want to do like a green, a white, and a black and a purple, maybe a pink or a rainbow. Spread it out a little bit. See where most of your hits are coming from if you're getting hits. And if you're not, then you want to change everything. You know, you might want to change how far things are back from the boat. You might want to change how close they are. You know, overcast can make a difference too. You know, if it's an overcast day, bright sunny day, change your colors for that as well. But green is pretty much a staple, and whites are also a staple these days.
What colors might stand out better, and what would you might put during the bright day? But first, we're going to put the audience, give you a cliffhanger. We're going to come right back with this session on color and fishing at the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series right after a few commercials.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Simrad. Go with Simrad and go with confidence. Penn, let the battle begin. Roffs. comprehensive oceanographic analysis for fishing, Mercury outboards, go boldly, angle, portable fridge freezers, and high-performance coolers. George will be right back. Welcome back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. We're at the IGFA. I'm working with Captain Cory Crochetiere. Cory, you got into certain colors would work better on overcast days. Other colors might work better on bright days. Give me a specific example of what you might do when it's overcast in terms of color, and then why.
Whenever it's overcast, I always tend to change my colors to a brighter color because the water's going to be a little darker, obviously, so it's because there's overcast, not as much sun going through the water. And it seems like the brighter colors stand out a little bit more, whether it's the silhouette or just the attraction of the actual color standing out for the fish a little more.
Give me an idea of the colors. What colors in particular are you talking about as far as bright?
Chartreuse is a really good color. One of my favorites is like a bubblegum pink. Works really well.
And what about bright days? What would you do differently there?
Bright days, number one color is white. I'm going to throw white on those bright days. Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's a popper throwing light tackle at tunas, or if you're trolling a spread with spreader bars and stuff like that, I'm going to go with the whites for sure.
And this is probably a loaded question, and I almost hate throwing the ball to this guy here, but Harry Vernon, I know you have your thoughts on lures and colors.
You got to have one of every color out there all the time. It's just
says the tackle shop owner.
Yeah, it's just something you need to. It's been trolling my whole life, and I've had your blue and whites, your green and yellows, your pink, and my favorite's pink and white, and it's because I probably fish more pink and white than anything that I have out there. But what we did years ago, we were fishing off the Bahamas for tuna, and threw my son in the water, and he was filming these tunas striking these surface plugs that we were throwing out. And you could see a dark plug. It was a sunny day, and that dark plug, you could see it really, really well. And then you could see a brighter color chugger going across the water, but you couldn't see it as well as the dark one. So I'm picturing yourself down below looking up. Most of the fish that you see that swim out there have white bellies. And the reason why I look at it, that have white bellies, because they're up there swimming, and it's less visual for someone to see it. Whether that's a fact or not, I don't know, but that's the way I look at that. And every time you'd see those tunas would go right to that black plug, every time when it was sunny out. So I've always thought, you got a shadow going across the water, and I think those fish see that shadow and will go up to that fish, now, or bait or whatever you're using. Now, whether they hit it or not, but they'll come up to it, whack it, see it, hang out with it. It's personal preference. If you got 10 guys using pink and white, and one guy using a blue and white, your dominant color is going to be pink and white because more fish are going to be caught on that. Your odds are greater there.
Sure. And Cory, you do a lot of topwater fishing for the tunas, bluefins and yellowfins in there too. Now, when you're working at topwater, is it more the action, or do you feel that color comes into a play with those as well?
Color a little bit, but it's more so the action, I would say. Our number one colors for the surface lures are the whites and the silvers, I would say. And I think that's mostly so they can hear and see the splash, and then afterwards find the bait. And the silver seems to be real good. It gets a good refraction of light and probably shines real good for them, so that way they can key in on it a little bit better.
And we mentioned this earlier during the mahi session. I always keep a chugger on the boat to try to chug in these mahi because they're such tuned in for these audibles. And I like to match it up there too. We use that big Rapala chugger, and I'll pick up the flying fish pattern. Going back, we talked about on the troll, you see these flyers, sometimes they're on a selective feed, and I'll use that pattern. Whether or not it makes a difference, I don't know. And the other pattern I will use is the mahi pattern for the same reason. At the bigger bulls, they're cannibals. They eat the small ones. And sometimes in the Bahamas, if you see a lot of these blackfins around, they got a tuna pattern. And I'll start chugging that too, just to try to make it look like what's in that environment. And whether or not it makes a difference, I don't know. Now, what could you add in terms of color and influencing some of the fishing you may have done over your career?
Right, so I think you all have touched upon in terms of helping the fish find that bait, right? So the chugger, that noise is going to help bring the fish in, right? It's a big ocean out there. So we're talking offshore fishing. You want to help that fish orient to where the action is, right? And so if you're trolling, if you're casting the chuggers, they're going to hear that, or they may see something moving fast down the weed line if you're trolling, but then having the color to help them key in onto where that is, whether it's in your spread or the bait. You mentioned the chugger, looking up at it, seeing the silhouette. That's the key, right? And so it's a little different when you're fishing up near the surface than it is as you fish for deep water fish, right? Because colors, you lose that color as you go deeper.
Sure.
So the way the fish's eyes are, the rods and the cones in the fish's eye. And so, some of that is going to impact your color choice with your lure.
Perfect. And hold that thought. We're going out to a commercial break. You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series. Color and fishing is a topic, and we're coming right back to it after a few commercials.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Rapala, your best shot at a world record. Suffix, always use the best line. VNC, your expert in hooks. Williamson Lures for the pelagic playground. Starbright, blending technology with performance since 1973. George will be right back. Welcome back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series. We're at the IGFA, and it's being brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. I have our panel of experts. I'm working with Dr. John Stieglitz. And again, the offshore scene, you're just discussing your thoughts on color. And I'll bring this back up for an open discussion. Cory, Harry, whoever, you could jump in on it. In talking with some of the Jersey guys that are big time in trolling, they say a color that has been sort of kept under wraps that is proven to be really, really good is pure black. They say whether it's the pure black teaser flaps they put down that look like bonitas, to whether it's all pure black lures, that is a very, very hot color and proving to be up out of the New England and that area there. So anybody want to chime in on the thoughts on pure black? Cory?
Actually, one of our top spreader bars that we use for tuna in the early season when they're kind of spread out and they're not really, congregate in the areas and you're trying to locate these fish. One of our top colors is black. It has like a little bit of a sparkle to it too, and a little bit of a red stripe, but it's mostly a predominantly black. That's probably, I would say, in the top 3 colors that we use.
Very interesting. In my very first blue marlin I ever caught was in Chub Cay. And, I was like, the fishing guy, you go match nature, but then you can't help but look at all these cool colors. So you order a bunch of them. And I think that satisfies you more than it does the fish. And I was trolling a good spread. I had this all black lure running close. I got my first blue marlin out of my boat, Chub Cay. It was 221 pounds. And I mounted. I still had that mount, but that was on a pure black lure. So, you just never know as far as the coloration patterns. But Cory, let's go back up. Because when we were doing a striped bass, and you had a bunch of different color or shades of color of these plastic eels, and you had us fishing, and I forgot the colors. There are 2 main colors. Now, do you remember what they were?
Yeah.
And why? Does that match the color pattern more to the sand eels that were coming up? Give me a little side look at that.
Yeah, so number 1 and number 2 colors is the shimmering eel, which is a very, very natural looking color. Kind of has a greenish brown back with like an olive belly. And then the other one is the midnight calamari. Sounds just like what it is. It's like a dark pink and purple color. And the midnight calamari we tend to use more in low light conditions. And I think that's mostly for the silhouette factor. These fish can see the darker colors a little bit better when it's dark
Even
out.
though you're working them on jigs and they're down deep, still low light, you feel that produces better for you.
Yes. And then the shimmering eel color is usually my go-to during the day, which was on our trip. It was an afternoon trip. And the goal was, start in the afternoon, use the shimmering eels, and we'll switch to the midnight calamars when it got dark out. We just never got to that dark stage because we caught so many fish in the daytime.
Yeah, it was a terrible problem we had, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Let's look at flutter jigging, deep jigging. And I'll talk about the traditional jigs first, then we'll talk flutter jigs. Growing up, Harry, as you well know, there are really 3 colors. You had all white, you had yellow, and you had white with a red head, basically. Those were your primary colors.
Pretty much. Now you've got every color, every purples, blues, stripes, but the most popular that I've seen by far, it should have a glow in it. Either glow belly, glow sides.
I will give you one more. Is when you dolphin fish, we have bucktails tied up there too. The yellow always outproduced the white. And the reason being, one of dolphins' favorite fish to eat those little puffers.
and
when you see them come up and they're all yellow, and those little yellow jigs mimic that coloration, and the yellow jigs, when you pitch for school dolphin, seem to do so much more, at least in my fishing, than the white ones did. And we're going to hold you to that, and then we're going to go out a little bit deeper with the flutter jigs, Harry. That'll be your turn after a commercial break.
All right, I'm waiting right here.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series at IGFA. We're coming right back after a few commercials.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Atlas Tracks, satellite tracking of recreational pleasure boats, supply vessels, and fishing fleets. Columbia Sportswear, stay cool and protected while fishing. JL Audio, ahead of the curve. ACR, building survival products since 1956. Florida Keys and Key West. Visit flakeys.com. George will be right back. Welcome back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, filmed at the IGFA and brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. And before I turn it to Harry, I'm going to go with John. You were talking about certain colors disappearing faster in the water column than others. Could you elaborate on that?
Right, so your reds, your oranges, those sorts of colors, you know, they're very visible in the surface waters, but as you go deeper, you sort of lose that. And so your blues, your purples, those are the ones that are going to be more visible at depth, right? And eventually you get to a point where everything is nearly black at depth. And so I think you brought it up in terms of the glow, the importance of that. It's, again, helping the fish key in on what's going on there.
The glow, does that help the predator see this, or does that glow also maybe pull some bait fish in the area, and then these fish pick up the sense of the bait and the vibrations, which also help dial it in the plug? What's your thought on that?
I mean, they use, you know, any sort of bioluminescence at depth is used for all sorts of fish behavior down there. Anything from finding mates in deep water for the fish to feeding response in terms of attracting prey, right? Those sorts of things. And so as that, typically we think of it as it's a lure, right, that the fish has, and it helps them, you know, draw in that bait, which then they can eat. And so that's, you know, light is nearly non-existent down at depth, right? It's very, very hard to see. And so the fish are using, deep water fish, their eyes are oriented in a way in terms of the number of rods and cones that they have in their eyes that, you know, they can pick up very small amounts of light, these deep water fish. And so having that little bit of glow to your jig can help in terms of catching those deep water fish.
Interesting. And Harry, you're talking about the glows out deep, and elaborate.
Well, so many people vertical jig now. It's incredible. It's an easy way of fishing. It's a very productive way of fishing, from catching small fish to large fish. And obviously it depends on the depths that you're fishing, on the size of the jigs and the line that you're going to be using. But your most popular colors are anything from bright colors to dark colors, but it's got to have a glow in it. Everything's glow, glow, glow. And we see all the vertical jiggers coming in, and you'll have a particular vertical jig without any glow on it. They won't get it. It's just everything has to have a glow in it, which it makes sense. All your deep drop rigs, all that stuff, they have glow beads on there. They got glow squids, everything to attract the fish. Swordfish, so the guys using the glow skirts on top of those, which mimics the squids when they're out there changing all weird colors. I've seen it years ago, a squid on top of the water when we were sword fishing at night, literally just changed from like pink to completely beautiful white color, like just in a blink of an eye. It just like boom, and we were like, what in the heck is that thing? And then it came right to the boat, and we were able to get it. But it changed so many different colors. It was pretty neat.
So it's the same thing with the deep drop, whether you like hand cranking like I do, or you want to get lazy and push a button. But the old saying, no light, no bite. Even you put those little glow lights on for deep dropping as well, just something that I guess lights up that environment. Same with the day swords. You're dropping 900,000 feet. You got or 1,600 feet. You've got the light just to help pull that in there.
Yeah, I mean, figure yourself out there night fishing. If you have a light on a float way out there, you put a light in it so you can see it. Same thing the way it looks on the water. You put a light on the water, it's going to attract somebody. It's going to make them look and come to that area, hopefully, and You
Go
get whatever it
shallower
is.
with those flutter jigs. Now people that are replacing the traditional lead heads and they're working flutter jigs in shallow on out.
Right.
Does
It's
where
all
glow?
it's all active. It's a,
Actually, but do you think does the
it's a
glow make a
strike.
difference in that shallow or no? At that
I don't
point,
think in the shallow water, no, because it's pretty bright already. I mean, when you say shallow, if we're looking at like 80 feet of water in, probably not so bad. Once you get 80 feet out, it starts getting pretty dark in that blue water.
Yeah. Corey, as far as maybe getting bass, top waters, or whatever, again, what else would you might be able to add in terms of color, how that might improve someone's game, or your thoughts, personal thoughts on it?
Just to touch on the glow theory, if you recall the trip we did for the bluefin a couple years ago, we started in the dark, and the first 2 fish of the day were on jigs with glow on them.
Yes.
140 feet of water. So we'll use the glow in the low light conditions, and then we'll switch to the more natural colors once the sun is up.
There are places and times where color does key in. So I thought that was a very good exchange, and I liked having the scientific aspect because you're also an angler. So you brought a lot of value to this conversation, and it'll just keep going on as a myth, legend, and color fishing. But at least we chipped the iceberg with this one. You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series. I want to thank Dr. John Stieglitz, the one and only Harry Vernon III, and Captain Cory Crochetiere. There you have it. The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series will be right back next week with a totally different episode. If you want a chance to win our Super Grand Prize Mako 17 Pro Skiff Center console, powered by Mercury Outboard, enter the drawing at nationalseminarseries.com. One lucky winner will take home this beautiful Mako boat. Best of luck.